So, welcome, Chuck. Hello.
Ross, it's great to be here. It's great to see you again.
See you. And we caught up
Oh,
just before we came.
welcome to my man cave.
Welcome to Hawaii. I've been there before.
Yeah.
10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was there. We were speaking just before we came online, and thank you very much for taking your time to speak with us and give us your insights and lessons from lockdown and perhaps what our new normal is going to be for a lot of people. And we've called tonight Lifted and Being Uplifted. But before we came online, you and I were chatting, and we go back nearly 20 years. It's crazy.
Yes.
Wow. 20 years. Time just flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, we all had more hair then and, just more energy. And we were still stud muffins, but, just.
Well, I'm eager to hear what you've got to share with us about your understanding of lockdown and the new norm and what life could look like and what potential we've got available to us as we move into a new normal.
Well, I teach all around the world. And my last trip was in February, and then things really quarantined, really locked down in the States, in Hawaii, things like that. So everything started going online. But I have a network that goes from Singapore and China and Taiwan and Japan and goes to Germany and the UK. And so it's like, I get to hear from all over. And I get to hear when things aren't going well for people.
Okay.
So it's like it's this ripple, and I can feel it too. About 3 years ago, the only people working on a collective level to help the whole world basically were people who were working on their own mastery. And so they'd work on themselves, but they'd also work on helping the whole world, the whole group mind. But as of 2.5 years ago, every time I work with like an everyday person on the street instead of really advanced students, all of a sudden everybody was dealing with collective issues. Now, this is a deep part of the unconscious that comes up into the world. And so all the unfinished business of the earth, all the plagues and the famine and the earthquakes and the wars and the murders and the rapes and all of that stuff that hasn't been healed, all of a sudden it's coming up in a new form. And I recognized 2.5 years ago that everyone was starting to deal with this. And I saw that things were moving faster and faster and getting deeper and deeper with people to get through their everyday problems. And now it's full on where this collective issue is coming up into all of our minds. So sometimes I'll work with a person and they'll be feeling bad, but for no specific reason, or they look for a reason to pin it onto. But actually, it's, whatever problem they're facing, but also what's coming up from the collective unconscious, which is usually about 5 layers down in the. And I've worked with people who had catastrophic illness. I've worked with really positive people who've been professors and surgeons and hospital administrators and teachers and healers. And all of a sudden, as we're kind of growing, we hit this layer of the mind. And the best way to describe this is bad attitude. Now, usually, again, we've compensated for that. We're acting really good, really nice, but also this negativity comes up, this contrariness comes up, and and people have this huge authority conflict. Who, me? I don't have this problem. It must be the governments. It must be the authority. It must be my father. It must be my mother. But they're not really dealing with this core aspect of themselves. And so it's a really nasty area. And again, some of the most positive people in the world, when they hit this level, It's like all of a sudden you're trying to save their life and they're fighting you.
Mhm.
They're trying to win over you. So if they win, they die.
Mhm.
And they don't care. So it's a nasty area of the mind. So in this, the new normal is to find something to keep you moving forward, to find something to help you get over the fear. So one of the things I've done after I learned hypnosis and then found this intuitive method to get into the subconscious, which is much bigger than our conscious mind,
And
and
that
the
was yesterday.
unconscious. What's that?
I said, and that wasn't yesterday.
Yeah, that wasn't yesterday. So I've learned all this stuff that's come deep from people's minds, their soul mind, the unconscious. And so one of the things I found was that under every problem, there's a fear of the next step, a fear of going forward, and a fear that you can't handle it,
Mhm.
a fear that you're inadequate. You'll have fights. There's like many layers to a fight. Everybody's fighting to get their needs met or be right or win, or all these different areas. But the last core issue is that you're fighting with the other person because you and the other person are afraid to go to your next step. So it's an avoidance. Now, what the it's like a pressure cooker. So everything's cooking faster. Everybody's having to deal with everything more. So it's like how to learn how to deal with your family instead of just, taping your children to the ceiling with duct tape, so you can deal with them. And humor has been coming out to help people deal with their situations and to move forward. And it's a great healing method. But helping people to get over the next step. And one of the things that you can do that is every time you connect with someone, it's like it gets you over the fear of the next step.
Mhm.
One of the simplest healing methods, and this is a time for healing. You know, um, Over 20 years ago, I was realizing that at an unconscious level, at a soul level, we had all promised that we would take the world from this exaggerated, distorted, masculine world where the feminine isn't valued or honored. So you can't receive. So you work your ass off, but you can't receive anything. So you do a lot, but it doesn't make a difference. And so it's like how to move past that fear into a new way of life, which is partnership, which is intimacy and success equally, the masculine and the feminine equally. So people are just, this is accelerating that whole process because we weren't moving so fast. And of course, there's the bastions of the exaggerated, untrue masculine that is just consuming the world and just trying to win all kinds of paper money and wealth and greed and things like this. But it's like when the feminine comes in, we get our heart back, and then we can receive instead of just using up our health to gain wealth. It's like we come back into balance and we can enjoy life. We can taste the sweetness of life and the sweetness of our partners and our children's and our friends. And so here we are, we're social distancing, hopefully, and there's this lockdown, but Zoom is zooming off the rails. Skype is, there's so much where people are really connecting and really starting to value friendship because I can't take you for granted, and so many people have lost people, and it's how to let go so that you can have a renaissance, a rebirth in your life. So this is showing us what we're attached to. And as the Buddha said, all pain comes from attachment. So if you're suffering in any way, look at what are you holding on to? And the key thing is if you let go, what happens is then you're empty-handed, and the universe hates a vacuum. I, that rings a bell. And I found, when I was a young man and I really needed sex, that I couldn't have any until I let go of my need for it. And then I had all I wanted.
Yeah.
And it's a profound lesson. It's like your whole energy vampire trying to get from the past to sustain you now, but it won't sustain you. And it just keeps you locked down. So it's like how to let go, how to be here. Because this is where joy is. It's like there's so much to enjoy right now. And the thing is, there's also, my wife and I developed the psychology of vision, which is just a whole map of the mind that contains the spiritual. It contains love. My religion is love. It's like that's the big thing. It's like, and that's that bonding, that connection. Because where you have bonding, you have love and success with ease. So it's like to get to a place in your life where you could just enjoy life, enjoy the connections, be able to receive, and realize that heaven's will for us is total happiness.
Of course it is.
So when we're not happy, it's like what I have found is like there's all these where we're aligning with the ego, where we're investing in our ego, which is the principle of separation, and it wants to be special and wants to be the most special rather than just enjoy the love and the connection and the fun. But there's this connection from inside that wants to help us. So deep in the unconscious, we've all repressed this ability for miracles, which is the ability to change the laws of time and space. Now, you may have read stories about Aboriginal people who have all of these mystic abilities and qualities, like, and it was just a part of their natural world. Like a book by Lyle Watson, Gifts of Unknown Things, talks in Indonesia of they'd go out fishing and one guy would jump into the water and he'd know exactly where the fish were. And these are gifts that have been lost as civilization has taken over. But now, as we embrace, as we heal, and when something comes up, you got to go through it. You can't go around it because it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's going through it. But as it says in the Course in Miracles, if you remember who walks with you, you can't fail. It's easy. And somebody's always there. Like when I teach in Asia, which I started like 35 years ago, I could feel Buddha with me. I could feel Kuan Yin with me, or as they say in Japan, Kanon. But and then when I come west, there, I can feel Christ and Mary, and they've all reached oneness, so they're all interchangeable. So whoever you need will be there for you. Maybe just your own higher mind. For instance, in Asia, they talk about the Tao. It has the same qualities as the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Or in the original Course in Miracles, it talked about universal inspiration. It doesn't matter what you call it. A lot of us have had bad experiences with religion, but now it's about transcending that, getting over that. And, I was working with someone yesterday who is Catholic and had to get through all of that belief system and all of that judgment and guilt. And she wanted to get the t-shirt that said NCG nice Catholic girls do it with guilt. And she thought that would be a priceless t-shirt for her, just perfect. But it's like to get through these, there are just more things to forgive. Now, let me take you down a layer deeper. So we're all come to help bring the world to partnership. So we start with our own partnerships, our friends, our families, how to get closer. So that as we get closer, the world gets closer. And if we reach partnership, there'll be a whole new level of not only interdependence, but abundance. The principle of abundance is sharing. And there you go to partnership, you go to friendship, you go to community, and you work together. It's cooperation instead of I'm going to win because I'm the biggest, baddest ass in town. So that's all ego stuff, and you can't be happy. That's all about domination and submission. And if you go for domination, you're going to have domination and submission. So it's like if you go to be good, and we all tell our babies be good, okay, but that gets them into a system of good and bad. So it instills guilt into them rather than what's true or what works for everyone. And that's the consciousness we're growing into. We want to grow into that place of partnership. And my son is working on new levels of economy and models of people working together so that the world comes to a new place, because we need a new economy that grows from capitalism into something cooperative where everybody gets the benefit and equally, and then there'll be a lot more. Buckminster Fuller, the scientist, proved scientifically many years ago that if everybody worked together, that in 10 years, the poorest person today would be richer than the richest person today if we all work together. Beyond, national boundaries, things like this. And we all just saw ourselves as friends. As we say in the psychology of vision, friends helping friends. Maybe people you haven't met, but to treat them as your friend and to work together. So it's like this is kind of a great movement forward, and it starts with our own personal healing and how to just move forward simply, easily. Now, one of the things that I found that always works, even if you're on your knees with pain, is that someone will have a greater need than you. So if you realize, that's the important thing, realizing, oh my God, I'm in such pain, somebody needs my help. And who is it that needs my help? Like, I'll give you an example. I was at a workshop. This was like in 1989. And all of a sudden I hit this layer of meaninglessness. And a lot of that's going around. And that's the battleground of your ego and your higher mind. Now, the higher mind never fights, but the ego is always speaking in a carnival voice. Come this way, little boy, little girl, I have chocolate for you. And we go in to get entertained in some way. We go for some false god, and it won't sustain. But heaven just always has meaning. So I said, what's my meaning? And it said, just help them, because it was a workshop. So I just giving myself to the people there. But another layer came up, which was really strange. And I said, well, what else is my meaning? And it said, love her, meaning my wife, right next to me. So that was easy. So I just poured love into her. And all of a sudden, what was meaningless turned into happiness. So who needs my help? It's a leadership principle. It takes us to interdependence. No matter how bad you are, there'd be somebody worse. I was doing a workshop in 1987 in the Five Lake District around Mount Fuji, and it was like the 16th morning. And so the Scheisse had really hit the fan. And 2/3 of the workshop was on the floor with pain. Mm-hmm. And this one guy I'd been working with who had actually been dealing with how his parents had tortured him. And through the whole workshop, one story after another would come up. And I watched him, he was on the floor too. I watched him see somebody else across the room and actually crawl across the room to embrace her. And they both then were crying tears of release, tears of joining, because at that level, it's just, you need that comfort. You need that support. and when you hit that primordial level of pain. And they were both through it. Okay, so here it is. It's 1990, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm having, like, I thought it was the heart attack. I thought it was the big one, and I realized, oh, somebody needs my help. Who is it? My father. So through this pain, I poured love to my father, and that felt good. But as soon as I stopped, it was, in rare cases, there was a second layer, and it came back, and I go, well, who else needs my help? And my best friend popped into my mind. So I poured love through that fear, terror, pain to him. And that was great. I felt really good. But as soon as I stopped, it was back. And I go, well, who else needs my help? And my wife. And she's sleeping next to me. So I poured love to her. She'd already trained me, never for any reason wake me up if you want to live. So I just wanted to live, and I just poured love into her, and then I felt good, except as soon as I stopped, it was like back again. And I'd never gone past 2 before. And I said, who else needs my help? And I heard a voice that said, the whole world. And I said, how can I help the whole world? And it said, right. So I got up out of bed. It was 2 a.m. I went downstairs to the dining room table, and I started writing. And I wrote for the next 6 hours. And it was the first time I wrote about the psychology of vision. And that was 52 books ago, with about 6 more in line to be published. So that's what I can do to contribute. But it was so good. I've been in this writing block for 12 years. And finally it broke through, but it was by helping others. You help others, you help yourself. And as you give, your generosity builds your immune system.
Absolutely.
So you want to find out what makes you happy as we move from people into sardine people, as things are moving closer and closer, and we're getting, we're in life. But going to be quarantined, that I was going to have months of honeymoon with my wife.
Lovely.
So might as well enjoy it. And there's ways to accomplish that. Heaven's will for us is perfect happiness. So there must be a way, even in the worst situations, and we have a whole lifetime worth of traumas and heartbreaks. And the thing is, if you have a heartbreak, there's a good chance you'll have a heartbreak story, which means that some part of you that got emotionally arrested and wounded, probably a child, is writing heartbreak stories for you. Now, we have lots of stories. We have positive stories. We have guilt stories. We have other negative stories. I was working yesterday with this woman. She had tragic stories. And she could see the effect on her life. It was just a mess. And I said, well, what are you using them for? And she was going, oh, I'm using them to get attention and to be special. And I'm using them to get revenge on my parents. So there's all these hidden things. If you want to understand your deeper mind, just ask this question. What am I using this event for? What am I using this experience for? And what I found working with people in the subconscious and unconscious is 85% of all of our problems, we set them up because we're afraid of going forward to the next step. We're afraid of our purpose, of what we promised that we would give to life and to the world. And so as we get over that fear, and then there's the 15% of real issues that we need to learn to gain the gifts underneath and the understanding so we can help everybody else as part of our purpose. It's the most important thing. And what people are waking up to is like, what's my purpose? Well, be happy. That's my purpose.
Yeah.
And how many happy people do you know? And if you see no happy people around you, maybe you're the one that's called to be happy. If something's missing around you, you're the one that probably has the gift inside. And that's what I found years ago. Under every problem or trauma, you have a gift that's equal to the problem underneath you. If you go right to the gift, if you intuit it or reason it out and embrace that, the problem begins to dissolve. So healing's becoming important for people. How to make things better, how to correct things. So your meditation, your spiritual path, whatever it is, it's like, and to learn how to transform things back to more of the truth. And it's like, if you help somebody, you feel good, you feel empowered. You empower someone, you empower yourself. You give to someone, your immune system goes up. And it's so, how to heal, how to make things better, how to be a change agent in a world, how to, everybody's feeling down, and sometimes it's just coming up from the unconscious, from the collective. So what do? Well, who needs my help? And there's so many things that we can do to help each other and to work together. Because here's what I found deep in the subconscious: everything we blame on someone, actually, that was a time they needed help. That was their call for help, and we used it to separate and build our ego, and we had to suffer to do that. And the ego says, oh, I'll take care of that pain for you, and it dissociates it, but it also cuts off part of our heart, and it hides the gift. So all of this is building toward, like, what's my purpose? What is my personal contribution? So, now I'm not running all around the world every month to some place in the world. Now I'm staying home and using Skype. And so my wife and I are having a better time together. Instead of just whenever I'd come home, it would be, Italian foreplay. Lindsay, I'm home. It would be, now we're just building honeymoon just together. So, and people have big challenges, but people have really big soul gifts. And this thing at the collective where there's this bad attitude, it's like, here at the collective, there are redemptive level gifts. Let me give you an example of this. About 22 years ago, I was, when my schedule had more time, I would go to First Nations community, mostly in British Columbia, and donate a workshop. And so I was up in Haida Gwaii, and this, I forget if it was the second morning or the third morning, and I was dealing with this woman who had been raped, and she was enraged because the rapist would, she'd see him in the community and he'd just smirk, it just, gotcha. And so I was to help somebody out of a really deep spot. It's like, find what motivates them. And if you can motivate them, then the way will show up. And see, this, all of our pain, all of our problems come from the past. Shakespeare had a line, he called it the fore bemoaned moan. You're moaning with a problem, with pain, but it's the fore bemoaned. It came from the past. And he was a genius in that way, in some of the things that he wrote. So, and that's what I found, and lots of things say that. Gestalt psychology, I found that myself, working deep in the mind, Course in Miracles, so many things. So you heal the past and the pattern clears. So anyhow, she had been in the government schools, and in the government schools, they took all of the Native children from 5 to 18 to these government schools. And all the sexual predators of North America went to these schools because it was free lunch. And they preyed on the children, from 5 to 18. And many of the boys and girls were raped or molested, many on a daily basis, which led to just enormous problems in the First Nations communities. So she had been part of that, and she had a proctor, somebody in charge of the kids, and she was getting raped all the time. And so it was like this rage, went back to that situation. And so it was really, and the whole room was angry because 98% of the people in the room had gone through that experience. So it was a real important, crucial moment. And all of a sudden, I got the inspiration. I said, do you realize how you're treating your boyfriend and your children because of what happened to you? And that the anger and the rage and how you're treating them is almost like you're emotionally raping them. And the whole room went, and she got it. She realized that, and that love for her children, motivated her to not only forgive the rapist, I mean, if you could imagine that, but to forgive that proctor who had raped her so many times. And what we found was, beside the forgiveness and beside this divine help, she had a gift of redemption. Able to open up that gift of forgiveness, receive that divine help. Somebody role played, heaven, the creator, and came to her, and together they went forward and brought the gift of forgiveness and redemption to the rapist, because he had been raped also. He had been that little boy back during that time too. So it's just, if you don't heal the problem, you pass it on. And even if you withdraw so as not to pass it on, your kids get the same experience of being unloved and abused, neglected. So anyhow, she brought this to him, but then he had 5 people. The proctor had 5 people from her intuition who had raped and molested him. And those 5 people had 20 people who had done it to them. And those 20 people had 100 people. So there was this whole network of people. And as she brought it up to each layer, it's like they turned around to their predators, and she was able to bring redemption to the whole network all the way up. People role playing this. Now, I got to tell you, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. We were, tears were streaming down my face to see a woman so brave and so courageous and so loving that she would give up this wound for the sake of her children and for healing. And then when the whole network was passed up, they turned around, and all the people that she had abused because of what had happened to her, she was able to bring this redemption and forgiveness down to them. And those people who were rolling that turned around to give it to the people that they had abused. And it went down this whole network of people freeing the people that we had done terrible things to, as well as those who had done terrible things to us. And it was just this amazing experience. But it's like, it's a network. It's like what happened, how our parents treated us or how they neglected us. First of all, it serves a purpose in the subconscious. Oh, I get to be independent. They screwed up. I can do it my way now. I get the control. And they come down from the pedestal. I don't have to listen to them. Look what they did to me. But if you want to get over all the pain in your life, revisit each incident and realize that when someone was acting badly, that was their call for help. And they were calling for help from you. And you have the gifts inside, not to mention the gifts heaven would give you right at the moment, to save them, to free them. And then you'd both be empowered. And then instead of walking this ego path of restriction and constriction, you would have this more expansive, enjoyable, enlightened path that you could enjoy. And then you have these gifts to give to everyone, because if you could do it with your father, you could give it to anybody. If you do it with your mother, you can give it to anybody. So it's how to, to get out of the old pain so that you get to the humor and the fun and the joy that is waiting for you. Because here's what I learned many years ago: pain is always a mistake. And it's like, I suffered so much as a kid, watched my family suffered so much, that I naturally went into a direction of healing. And the biggest problem was always myself. Once I cleared up my stuff, then everybody else could clear up their stuff. I once heard my mother screaming at my father when I was 9 years old that she never wanted me. You never wanted. My whole world collapsed, and I totally repressed it. But as a young doctor in my 20s, I couldn't understand. Here I was, the most buff guy around, and somehow my relationships never worked out. Somehow this heart connection, as much as I love people, it didn't work out. And then I discovered, I had this thing buried in my subconscious. And my father, I asked him once about it. He said, it wasn't that she didn't want you. She didn't want you so close to your older sister. But at 9 years old, I didn't get that. But once I healed that part of me, realized it was this big mistake. And my mother, actually, I was the one who had come into the family to help heal my mother of this. But instead, I used it to be independent. So once I healed this, nobody's been able to tell me a story about being unwanted and have it be true, and to hold on to it. Now, some people, like, I'll do a workshop and I'll work with the group about that, get them over it, and I come back 6 months later and they go, yeah, I was unwanted. Because they're working it, they're using it. What are you using your problems for? You have the courage to go beyond that, to be the lighthouse, to show the way, to be a happy camper. I mean, in this world of quarantine, can you be the lighthouse? Can you show the way? And if you're listening to this, yeah, you're probably called to be the one that leads the way and heal this whole pattern. So, and then I could trace it back ancestrally with my mother, where she picked this up from my grandmother, who her mother had died at 12, and she had to run the whole farm for my grandfather and take care of the other 5 kids. And so there's always this understanding, and it healed this ancestral pattern, because you can heal past life patterns. You can, it's no harder than healing anything. But there's ways to do it. There's all kinds of books written. Ask heaven, what's the book that will really help me go forward, that will inspire me, that will empower me? And there's books for everybody at all different levels. And there's all kinds of experiences going on. There's workshops, and there's teachers, and there's friends. And find a good friend to go through this experience with, to talk things over with. Somebody who's empathic for you, who understands, and doesn't let you get away with all your complaints and stuff like this. So here's a big thing that I discovered: every problem is a complaint. And some of us are complaining all the time, world-class complainers. And some husbands, they're complaining all the times in their head because they're smarter. They know, don't complain out loud if I want to keep living in this house. So it's why so many men die within a year after they retire. Their wives kill them. That's easily what happens. That's a joke, yeah. So anyhow, so it's like finding the way through. It's finding the way through, and heaven wants to help you find the way through, because heaven's will is that you be happy. So it's only where we've invested in our ego, in these mistakes. And all pain is a mistake, and all pain can be cleared up. Now, I got gold medals in pain growing up and in my first heartbreak relationships. So I had to learn from scratch. As one astrology said, you have no water in your chart. You have no control over your emotions. And I went, yeah, that's really true. So I had to learn from scratch how to heal guilt. And I got a gold medal in guilt at the Special Olympics. as well as heartbreaks, as well as holding on. So beside getting people out of pain, it's like I had to learn these things, what will work, what looks good but doesn't work. Like I had to give up most of my doctoral education because it didn't help when I was on the front lines with people. And I was working with the Navy with drug rehab, and the problems were so big that none of those models really worked. So I had to learn how to do it myself. So I studied hypnosis, and then I learned this intuitive method, which is really quick and can get to the heart of where the problem started, and then to correct that, to help them see in another way. When I first got started, I go back to these terrible traumas and then help them see, well, can you see this is what's happening? Or can you see that's what's happening? Or can't you see that what your father did? It's like if you had grown up with your grandfather, you would be twice as bad as you are now growing up with your father. He healed that much. He stepped forward that much. Can you feel grateful? And if you can feel grateful, it's like you're free and you want to free yourself. I talked to so many people who felt they didn't live up to their parents' expectation or their father's expectation or their mother's expectations. And, I can get people over that in 10 minutes. Do you want to see? It's a really quick, fun exercise. So, Ross, did you feel you lived up to your father's expectations? What pops in? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yeah.
All right. So it's like you have this gift of empowering your father.
Yeah.
So any of the problems, any of the neglect, it's like you can look at. So there's 3 ways your father's going to stay the same. The first way is, lousy father, didn't get who I was, just treated me badly. So that's attitude number 1. Attitude 2 is, I feel so sorry for the guy. He doesn't have a clue. He was neglected. He neglected me. Where I feel so sad. Attitude 3, he did the best he could. He gave it all he had. If he had known a better way, he would have done it. I'm so grateful to him. So if you have attitude 1 or 2, you will feel sad and bad about yourself and about life. But if you have, and he's not changing, he's the same guy. If you go for attitude 3, I did the best he could. I'm so grateful. I mean, how many diapers did he change with me? I mean, geez, how many late nights did he put in? How much did he support, the family? And all of a sudden, anything that you feel grateful for, it's like you start feeling good about yourself. And he doesn't change. It's your attitude that gives you your experience. And that's everything about life.
Yeah.
Your attitude gives you your experience. And as you feel gratitude, also your immune system builds up. They say if you take, and I haven't checked this out completely, but they say if 3 times during the day you stop and feel grateful for something in your life, this beautiful nature, my partner, my son, my daughter, anything, and you've 3 times during the day, and you do that for 3 weeks. At the end of 3 weeks, you'll have this kind of baseline happiness that won't go away. Now, I don't know that to be true, but I'm trying it out. I'm usually a happy guy anyhow, just because of I was a hot mess as a kid. I was a hot mess in my first relationships. I had to find my way out of it. So now I've written books on how to get rid of guilt and how to get rid of heartbreaks and things like this. Like most people don't realize that they're writing heartbreak stories. And if you're writing heartbreak stories, if you've had heartbreaks you haven't gotten over. So I ask people, how many heartbreaks do you have? How many heartbreak stories? Now, the thing is, if you have heartbreaks or heartbreak stories, you will have revenge and revenge stories.
Yeah.
And revenge is like a cross-eyed swordsman who goes, hi-ya! You hurt yourself. Every time you've hurt yourself, it was actually an act of revenge. Every time you failed, it was actually an act of revenge. This is what the subconscious shows. It was just a mistake. And this is why any pain, any heartbreak can be healed, because it's a mistake. And I say that from working with people who've tortured and murdered other people, because if you don't heal it, the guilt will drive you to do it again.
Absolutely.
So you got to clear that guilt out of the way, bring understanding and bring the miracle. And then all of a sudden they're that much they can heal other people on the edge instead of carrying on these terrible patterns. The wounds we get that we don't heal, we pass on to our partners, our there's let's take everything in our lives. Because in the subconscious it shows that we planned the whole thing, we set it up. I mean, it's crazy. I wrote a book that was published 2 years ago in Germany called Why Shit Happens. I've been planning to write that book for a long time. So soon, we'll get it up on Amazon, because I have like 50 books to get up on Amazon, and I only have about 6 or 8 up on there now. But it's like how to take responsibility and change your life, how to have a better relationship. About 8 years ago in Germany, a book that I wrote came out. It was called How to Change Your Partner. What I figured every woman in the world would buy this book and I could retire. But not yet. Anyhow. And of course, in the first page, I say, you've all tried to change your partner. And the only way you can change your man is if he's wearing diapers. It's like, you've all tried to control your partner. It never worked. But if you want to learn how, keep reading. And then it goes on to show all these different ways of changing your mind and changing your world. Because actually and there's really deep levels of this that go into the soul patterns and things like this, where we're colluding that they be this way. Because the whole world is, and this is again an unconscious thing, the whole world is our mirror. Everything we've judged about ourselves is now out there. Or every gift we were afraid of, we've now thrown it out there. The world is our mirror. And there's a ancient saying I made up about 20 years ago. I love making up ancient sayings. But the ancient saying I made up was, people who live in a house of mirrors shouldn't throw stones. Because every time you attack yourself at the same time. And that's the foundation of the ego. It builds itself on attack and self-attack.
Yeah.
So we judge, which is attack, and then we judge ourselves. And basically any judgment or grievance hides guilt. And once I learned that, I could really start moving people through. Because every time we didn't respond to a call for help, we didn't keep our promise to help that person, we felt guilty. And we're punishing ourselves. There's no problem we have. There's no pain we suffer that isn't a self-punishment. And the thing is, it's all illusion. It's not true. Yeah, it's true that we feel guilt, but there's no guilt that's true. And I say this with authority, having worked, with so many people who've done so many heinous things, but that can be healed. That can be corrected. And then those people are really great at saving people who are going through the same experience. So it could be a network of healing around the world of just friends helping friends. And that's where we got this motto, about 8-10 years ago. I was just walking toward my office and kind of praying, going, it's like, what could help the world? And I heard the voice, every once in a while in my life, I've heard a voice, and it said, an idea. And I go, an idea? What idea could help the whole world? And it was very clear, an idea that everybody could get behind. I said, what idea could everybody in the whole world get behind? And it said, by this time I was sitting here in this chair, and it said, friends helping friends. What wouldn't you do for your best mate? What wouldn't you do for your BFF? You just want to do whatever you can to support them.
Absolutely.
And empower someone, you empower yourself. And so, be the one who helps people, who uplifts people, and you'll be uplifted.
Yeah.
So I'm not flying around the world anymore, but I am doing online workshops. My wife and I have one coming up for Germany this next week. And that's all on the Psychology of Vision website.
Okay.
But
put that on. I'll tag it in at the bottom once we're done and I've uploaded this. I'll tag your details and your websites, and I'll get.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been awesome. You see, I can't believe it's been 10 years since I last saw you, and yeah, goodness, man. I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. I just don't want to think about it.
It's moving fast. It's just going so fast.
It's insane how quick time's going. But actually, that'll be 11 years. That'll be 11 years past. It'll be 11 years come October that I finished my 100 days with you in Hawaii in that office. It was like yesterday.
It's like yesterday. It's so. My mother said, as the record gets, this is, how old she says, as the record gets toward the end, it goes faster. I said, Mom, that's the toilet paper roll. As it gets toward the end, it goes faster. I had to keep my mom laughing, just.
Yeah. Doesn't it just? It's been a gift to see you. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Give my love to Lency and to Chris. And I'm friends with the kids on Facebook. I follow the photography and the arts. And goodness, your daughter was 13 when I met her in London. I think I babysat one night for the two of them. And they're now, that was 20 years ago. It was Evie Pryor, daughter, I think, was there, Holly, and Evie, and that was 20 years past. It's crazy.
Wow.
Absolutely crazy.
We've had some really good times together. It's
just
beautiful.
Yeah, I've had some fun. I tell you, the last few years have been the best I've ever had, Chuck, really. The last few years have been great, and it just feels as if it's getting better and better every day. I love it. So excited to be alive right now. It's awesome.
Just
really, say that from my heart. It has been the best few years of my life, really. Last few years have just been incredible. I've been very, very fortunate, and I've been blessed, and I feel very grateful for what life's given me in the last few years. I'm very, very lucky. So, I hope it's not going to be another 10 years before I see you again, old chap. But,
holy smokes.
Yeah, all the best. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I love Ross, and to your whole audience out there, just lots of blessings. So.